Well, hello everyone. Let me just check. We have some people here. Okay. I'll just run through a list of names to begin with. I think I have a David, an Aaron, a Sunju, Muraf, Asyaf, somebody called iPad, Wu Yi, Vikas, Balawatiwi, and Haifa perhaps, and maybe oh, quite a few more. Okay, all right. Well, hello everyone else. I better get on with the presentation then. Okay, so what I am looking at this morning is learning with case studies, and in particular with for a business subject. Okay. However, case studies did not start in business. They came from studying law, and before that from studying medicine, and they're used in many areas of study, including engineering and other areas as well. But it was Harvard case study, it was Harvard Business School 100 years ago that when they started teaching business, around 100 years, just a little bit more than 100 years ago, that really made the case study the center of their method of teaching. And it's been so successful that case studies have been used in teaching business in business schools all around the world. It's a very important part of the way that NCUK and DIFC teach business studies. And I use cases for my IFY students. They're the students getting ready for undergraduate programs. And I also use cases for the PMP students. So they will be getting ready for postgraduate programs at master's level. Okay, so we just go on through and we have a look. So the first thing is, some of you might have used case studies for learning before. So what is a case study? Well, in very, very simple terms, case study is a story, okay? It's a story in business. It's a story about something that happens in a particular business, typically. And as part of a learning experience, then it's a description of a business situation that students will have to analyze. And students will analyze cases in class, either in small groups or in the whole class group, guided by a teacher. Our coursework as part of the IFY program, the coursework uses case studies. These would be projects that students have to do over several weeks. And cases are also used in our final exams, so as well. And they're an important part of our way of teaching business, because when students go on to study business at university, it'll be an important part of their classes, their courseworks, and their exams there as well. So by learning how to work with case studies here in DIFC, you are better prepared to learn with them when you go on. In fact, there was a PMP student, so he was getting ready for master's level study. There's a PMP student about 4 years ago who finished PMP with us. I had been teaching him case studies on his PMP program management classes. He went to DCU and he ended up doing the same case study in DCU as part of his master's program, and he's now teaching in DCU because he's a tutor there while he's continuing on with his PhD studies. Okay, so they're used in many academic environments in class, in coursework. Does anyone have a question there? Somebody popping in a question? Might be just talking on your phone, but if you have a question, chime in, no worries. Okay, so it is, just to recap there, it's a story in very simple terms. It's a story, and but it's a story for learning purposes, so that students hello. Okay. So that students learn about different situations in business, marketing, finance, and so on. The learning with case studies is quite a deep and complex type of learning, which is, it was developed by Harvard Business Studies. So I'll just look at one or two of these. Subject knowledge in the blue there. For subject knowledge, case studies are a way of deepening your knowledge of business. So you learn ideas in class and in books about things like marketing and finance. But to really deepen your learning, you apply this knowledge by looking at a real life case, such as marketing at Coca-Cola or finance in Toyota, some situation like this. For international students, a very important part of working with cases is the skills practice it gives with language and communication. So that there's a lot of reading, writing, listening, and speaking when you are learning with cases. And this is very useful for second language students to have further practice of English language skills outside English classes in your normal subject content classes. And it's at the level that you will be working with English when you go to university. One last idea there working with cases is the way it gets students involved working with each other in team working. So the little blue over to the left there. Many case study classes will involve students working in groups and in teams, and this is an approach that will continue at university, because in job purposes, when people finish studying business at university, they're going out there working as part of a marketing team or a finance team, and eventually as part of a management team as well. So case studies get students used to talking about business problems as looking at business problems as part of a group. Okay. The case study itself, most case studies will be written case studies, which means it'll be on a piece of paper. More and more, some case studies are appearing as videos on the likes of YouTube, but most teachers, and certainly in exam situations, would still be using cases that are paper-based. So something like this. And a case smaller cases might be just 1 page or even less than 1 page, like the size of an IELTS reading. By the time you get to university level or finishing university postgraduate studies or doing master's studies, you might be working on cases that could be 20 or 30 pages and more. When you're presented with a written text, a case study in a written text, what it's going to come across like is, like any piece of complex writing, it will be organized in paragraphs, and this is a very useful way to approach the case. But there's other information in the case as well that you need to look at, and that will include information in tables that typically deals with numbers. And there might also be pictures and diagrams. Sometimes they're just to make the case look pretty, but sometimes they actually do have important information that helps guide your thinking in the case. Okay, does anyone have any questions at this point? Has anyone used case studies before? No questions? Okay, so I'll just move on then. Okay. One of the ways I ask students to think about case is with this particular diagram here. And what this diagram does is it divides the case into different levels of study. So up at the top, we have the whole text. So that would be one case, one big piece of reading. That might be 1 page, it might be 2 pages, it could be as many as 10 pages. Or at university, you could be doing 20, 30 pages as well. So you need to understand the case as a whole. And we often call this looking at the big picture. But any piece of large writing is going to be organized into paragraphs. And this is a very important way to be looking at a case, looking at the case paragraph by paragraph. Of course, you'll find paragraphs in any piece of writing, but it's a particularly important way to look at a case, because the paragraphs show you the way that the case writer has organized their ideas, the way that they want students to look at the ideas in the case to begin with. So by looking at paragraphs, by paying special attention to paragraphs, we can start looking at the important ideas in the case. And then the next level of analysis down that we look at is at sentences, and it's in the sentences where we find all of the details, okay? And really, you've got to combine, when you're working with cases, you've got to combine these three levels to really understand what's happening. You need to understand what's happening in the whole case. You need to understand the main ideas, and you also need to have good command of the details. Okay, I've got two clouds in the picture there up like near the top of the mountain. And these two clouds kind of, they show you one of the challenges that face students when they are reading a case. These particular challenges can get bigger when cases get longer, for example, a 10-page case study instead of a 1-page case study. But these two challenges will apply to every case that you do. There's a lot of information written in the case, and one of your jobs as a student is to take out the important information. What are the key ideas? What is the key information? What is the key data? Okay. Now, in addition to that, there will also be some noise there in the case. Some cases have more noise, other cases less noise. But as you're reading through the case, there's inevitably going to be some parts of the story, some of the details that really are not that important. And one of your jobs as a student reading a case is to decide what is the important information here and what is not so important. Because this applies to everything in life. Some things are more important, some things are less important. Very often I find that students who are seeing cases for the first time tend to think that everything is important, but it's not. One of the benefits of case studying is actually practicing the skills to decide what is important, what is not. Okay. So I've about 5 minutes left, and I think I'll spend most of that on this particular slide, because I know that certainly the students beginning most programs of study, whether that is at school level, secondary school level, university level, master's level, or in our own situation and in between levels such as a foundation program, most students approaching cases make the very first mistake made is not reading the case enough times. Okay, so every case study teacher understands this problem, that students jump through reading much too fast and try to start solving the problems in the case much too fast. And what's needed instead is a little bit more patience at the start to read the case several times. So I've just we'll use the rainbow colors here to show you what sort of reading will help you better deal with a case, understand the case, and get ready to start using the case in class. First time here in DIFC anyway, I just tell students to read the case as a story. Don't use a dictionary, just start at the start and work your way through the story to the end, because cases are stories. They're not meant for your entertainment, they're meant for learning. It's not like a Hollywood story or a Harry Potter book story, but it's still a story. It's a story for teaching and learning. So read it that way the first time. Now, the second time you read the case, some students will need to clear up some English understanding. I recommend that students the first time don't use a dictionary, because this is a skill that all students need to practice. But the second time, yeah, if you need to take out your dictionary to clear up some understanding. But it's really only the third time that you read the case that you can actually start to organize your understanding of what is really happening. There's so much information, so many ideas in a case that you don't you'll only have touched on these things the first or second time you've read. So the third time you start reading is the time that you start organizing what you understand about the ideas, the information, and the data. Now, there's a number of different things that can be done. One of the things I said to you early on is I encourage students to look at the paragraphs. This is how the writer told the story. So this is the first way that the ideas are presented. Each paragraph is a new idea in the case. So that's a good starting point for looking at the ideas. Later on in your case analysis, you need to look at ideas other ways. That's the last one I have down there. But after paragraphs, looking at numbers, and then after numbers, looking at time, the way that time affects the case. Time is very important. Many case studies are centered around a big change in the middle of whatever happens. There's a before and an after. Before some big change, after some big change, and that's a very useful way to understand the case. Another reason why time is important is looking at causes and consequences. The causes happen first, the consequences happen later. So time is very important to look at cause and consequence, or cause and effect. And then one more way to look at the ideas in the cases, which are toolbox. On a business program, you're going to learn different tools that we use in finance, in marketing. Tools in finance such as break even, or marketing such as 4Ps. And then you can take these tools and start to look at the case another way. All right, so I have an example here of one of the cases that we used in DIFC recently. And it's from paragraph 6 in the case, the last paragraph. And this is looking at before and after in a change situation. So what I would do here is the paragraph 3 years on, we have 3 or 4 sentences there. Up at the top, you see number 6. I encourage students to write the number of the case, the paragraph, and make their own heading for each paragraph. And then down below that, you'll see I've taken the numbers out: 8,000 staff ideas, 60% production targets, 6.3 million savings. And these are very useful. Remember that if I go back here for 1 second, the ideas are at the paragraph level, the details are in the deep, and to really get the benefit from case studies and to be good at learning with case studies and in exams testing at case studies, you need to have command of the ideas and the details. So that's it there. Thank you very much for your attention for 20 minutes. Does anyone have any question just quickly before we move on, because I think there's another teacher about to start shortly?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay. Now,
thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. I'm